This is TWiT.
They say the M1 will match peak PC performance using a quarter of the power, and it's up to twice as fast in CPU performance because of that. And, of course, the battery lives are impressive. It's actually what put me over the top. The top battery life is on the MacBook Pro 13-inch. They're claiming 20 hours of video viewing, which makes it basically like the iPhone Pro Max. It's the same spec. That's pretty, to me, that's pretty exciting.
That's an interesting statistic too, because they again, this is why we screen capture every time they put on that big grid of features at the end of talking about the chip. But the M1 chip has a section that's talking about how it's doing a lot of onboard acceleration, onboard support for HDR graphics, onboard support for accelerated H.264 and such. So I don't. Apple is usually very, very trustworthy when they come to battery life numbers. If anything, they tend to be a little bit conservative. But that could be an indication of how well it's taking on, as optimizing for a lot of very, very popular activities, such as video streaming, such as video playback. Either way, when they went to the more conventional metric, which is basically Wi-Fi video access, that still gives you potentially an entire day free from a power outlet, which is one hell of a nice thing. It seems as though long enough that so long as you're not waking up, pulling your MacBook into bed with you, starting work and then ending work, and it was time to go back to bed again, it seems like there's a possibility that this thing could actually last you all day without having to ever see a power outlet, which is, again, that's the thing that is going to get a lot of people to buy first generation hardware. That if they were already sort of, gee, my MacBook is 2 or 3 years old, or I've already gummed up the keyboard so bad that I've been sort of holding off until the next thing comes, that could be the thing that gets people to click that buy it now button. The idea of all day battery life, just like you've got on your iPad.
Rosemary, you use laptops. Is that because you want battery? You want to be mobile?
Work provided me with laptops because that's what they have Mac-wise. They don't, or at least didn't, give out Mac Minis.
Actually, that's
as
interesting.
hardware.
All our employees wanted laptops. Yeah.
And it's useful. You don't need a UPS because you've got one built right in, which is pretty nice. And there's some other benefits. Especially I work with some fairly important systems. It's pretty useful to just be able to chuck it in the boot of your car when you're going somewhere and know that if something goes offline, you've got battery and you can tether and you're good. But my main personal machine is a Mac Mini, and it works great. But I do love all day battery life from my MacBook, from my iPad Pro, and it would be really good to get that on the MacBook Air, especially considering how much development work I'm actually doing, and the fact that doing it on an iPad means that I have to either remote into another machine or have a virtual machine running somewhere, or Mac Mini server is in Mac Stadium or something like that. So battery life is definitely something that, that is one of the things that has me looking at the new MacBooks going, maybe I do, maybe I should, I don't know.
Yeah. I have an iMac, but I find that, most of my computing is on the laptop because I'm at breakfast or I'm sitting down in the easy chair, it's a natural. So I'm very hyper aware of battery life. I hate it when I'm sitting on the couch I got to plug in towards the end of the day. So I guess it's not a deal breaker, but boy, the idea that I wouldn't have to plug in.
Yeah, on the couch plugged in seems
it's just not
a little
right.
defeative. Yeah, I don't know why, because it's not that
or in
big
bed
like
plugged in. It's just not right.
It feels defeated, right? So I recently I never replaced the 2012 as my notebook because I've been iPad Pro since that came out. I do have a 2016 MacBook Pro, but it's primarily for events or things like that. But for the most part, it sits on the table. It's a very expensive sit on the table door stopper. But I just prefer to work on my iPad because I just feel it's extremely fluid. And I was one of the guys I made a video explaining that an iPad can be a laptop nowadays, considering we do so much in the cloud. And I guess I just drank Federico Kool-Aid. And, once editing came to the iPad, it's a thing. So like I kind of want one just because I want to have a first gen chip because it's a historical thing and I want to play with it. But do I really need one? No way, shape, or form whatsoever. Because I have that iPad Pro, and they haven't brought that much more to the table than the iPad Pro, other than the fact it's ridiculously fast. So yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 because I'd be missing my pen.
That's though I think a really important point is what Apple's done now is unified the product line. So it's these Apple Silicon chips all the way, from iPod Touch all the way up to the Mac Pro, or eventually up to the Mac Pro, and that's going to mean the differences are less obvious, and there'll be a kind of a linear move from an iPad to, say, a MacBook Air.